August 7, 2006 was a day that would leave the city of Tacoma in complete horror and disarray. As a group of 4 Army Rangers would execute a bank robbery that would be forever ingrained in the state of Washington. With complete military precision and accuracy, the group, spearheaded by Luke Elliot, would swiftly enter the bank and execute a heist that would last under 3 minutes and exit the building with a score of over $54,000 in the process. With their advanced military skills and heavy arsenal, the Rangers took the city by storm, as they quickly became an unstoppable force that dominated innocent civilian officers within the area. But they were soon going to be met with a formidable match as FBI agents would confront the Army Rangers head-on in a race against time that was going to determine who would come out on top. This is the Army Ranger Bank Heist. Born on June 26, 1986 in Kelowna, Canada, Luke Elliot Sommer belonged to a wealthy family that raised him as a Christian. But as well off as Sommer was, his childhood was full of isolation due to his family homeschooling him throughout his teenage years, with only his grandmother being his closest friend, taking him out for long trips outside his hometown. Sommer's father and grandfather had served time in the U.S. military and often told stories about their battles in the unknown lands of the East. The more Sommer spent time in his home, the more he got exposed to the military lifestyle, which eventually influenced his own personality and led him to devote his life to fighting enemies on the front lines and living life among heroes just like his father. Sommer's parents supported his dream of joining the military and wanted the rigid structure of the armed forces to prepare their son for the horrors of the real world. At the age of 17, Sommer began reaching out to Army recruiters around his area and even spent the night at one of their homes on the eve of his 18th birthday so he could enlist as soon as he became eligible. On June 26, 2003, Sommer officially joined the Army and began taking courses of one-station unit training at Fort Benning in Sand Hill, Georgia. To everyone's surprise, the homeschooled 18-year-old excelled at basic training and showed signs of leadership throughout his journey. Sommer graduated from his OSUT on January 27, 2004, and would later attend the Airborne School, completing it with ease. But the real test was about to begin for the young cadet as he went through rigorous training and endurance tests during the Ranger Indoctrination Program, which is proven to be one of the hardest tests for new cadets. But through sheer determination and will, Sommer pushed ahead and completed the 4-week indoctrination program, later joined the 1st Platoon known as the Mad Slashers and Charlie Company, which was based at Fort Lewis. After enduring so much pain and struggle, Sommer was finally going to live the life he strived for and was ready for his first deployment in the East. In June of 2004, Sommer was shipped to Baghdad, Iraq, where he fulfilled his duties for 3 months. After successfully completing his mission, Sommer came back to the United States and spent 6 additional months attending Ranger Consolidated Skill Training, which included courses related to operating heavy machinery, hot wiring vehicles, and basic EMT courses. But before he could catch a break from training, Sommer was assigned to another deployment mission, this time in Afghanistan. War never fazed the young Army recruit. Instead, it motivated him to volunteer in multiple training programs and become a leading figure among his peers, making him stand out amongst the other Rangers. With high hopes and nothing but determination in his heart, Sommer attended the United States Army Ranger School after coming back from Afghanistan in September 2005. Even though he failed the school twice, Sommer eventually graduated in April 2006. For an ordinary recruit, graduating from a prestigious military school would be a major highlight of their career. But for Sommer, it was a test of his own strength and competence, which he was eventually going to use for nefarious reasons. Throughout his military career, Sommer developed a strong relationship with his fellow Rangers and maintained communications with his friends back at home in Canada. Among the Rangers was Scott Byrne, who was a 4th-class specialist and one of Sommer's closest friends. As time went on, Somner stopped talking about his aspirations in the military with Byrne and began expressing his desire to commit armed robberies by using the military skills that he had learned over the years. Byrne entertained Somner's wild ambitions, not knowing that his friend was determined to make his dreams a reality. The more trust Somner developed among his peers, the more he made efforts towards persuading them into joining his League of Thieves, expressing the tactical advantage the Rangers had over local law enforcement officers and ordinary civilians. Somner became a role model in the eyes of many and was seen as a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. After months of persuasion, Somner had formed a gang of 4 Rangers, which included himself, Chad Palmer, Alex Blum, and Scott Byrne, along with 2 friends from Canada, Tigger Robinson and Nathan Dunmall, who had no military experience. During discussions between the group members, Somner revealed that the funds from the robberies were going to be used to start an organized crime family in Kelowna and take over the Hells Angels drug operation. Seeing that the heist operation held dire consequences, Byrne decided not to take part in any of Somner's ventures. Instead, he stuck to the sidelines and acted as an advisor for the heist. While Byrne opted out of the robberies, the other members blindly followed Somner's orders and were convinced that the ambitious Ranger was going to lead them towards a life of riches and fortune. With the manpower and resources ready to go, it was time to choose a target for the heist. Somner wanted to go big and planned to rob Chip's Casino in Lakewood, Colorado. The team initiated a reconnaissance mission within the casino, but due to their age, no one except Byrne was allowed in the venue, who was older than 21 years old. After noticing the high level of security and firepower of the casino guards, Byrne called off the operation and advised Somner to choose an easier target, like a local bank. After a brief discussion with Byrne, Somner decided to rob the Bank of America branch in South Tacoma. Now that the stakes were lower than before, Somner was confident that his first heist was going to be a success. But little did he know that his overconfidence was going to get the best of him. After scraping the previous casino plans, it was time to take a new route, but this time focusing on a Bank of America branch in Tacoma, Washington. Somner began debriefing the members of the group over text and doing private meetings in the barracks. Due to his clean record and pristine reputation, no Ranger outside his group became suspicious of Somner's private activities. The group began surveying the exterior and interior of the bank by conducting weekly visits, which each individual brought in new information regarding the bank's security and surveillance systems, while also planning their escape routes as they exited the buildings. After successfully assessing the level of security and vantage points within the bank, the group began strategizing their next moves. Somner assigned each member crucial tasks that could easily make or break the whole operation. In order to avoid any mistakes from happening, Somner began researching other robberies that occurred all over the U.S., taking down notes on the failures many faced during their attempts to rob similar local banks. As days went by, the group practiced their plan of action on the training grounds of their barracks by stacking up sandbags and positioning them according to the bank's interior walls and boundaries. What seemed like an average training session among fellow Rangers was actually a simulation for their upcoming heist. Throughout their training and research regarding local law enforcement response times, Somner decided to set a timer of 3 minutes for the heist in order to make a successful escape before the police arrived on the scene. After receiving his Canadian friends, Robinson and Dunmall, from the airport, all group members equipped themselves with AK-47s, handguns, grenades, and improvised explosive devices while wearing light body armor. Alex Blum was assigned as the getaway driver using his Audi A4. He was given strict orders by Somner to remove the license plate from both the rear and front of his vehicle before the heist began. Little did Somner know that one clumsy mistake was going to become the downfall of the whole operation. On August 7, 2006, Somner and the group executed their heist. With a clear goal in mind, the members exited their getaway vehicle, which was parked conveniently in an alleyway outside the bank. All 4 members entered the building, while Blum remained in the car and acted as the getaway driver, revving up the engines while the rest did the dirty work. The members hid their identities by wearing balaclavas, and as soon as they passed the doors of the bank entrance, panic began to spread as the group of robbers held everyone at gunpoint, ordering the people to lie on the ground and make no sudden moves. Somner assigned 2 members of the group, Chad and Nathan, to take defensive positions at the entrance and start the timer for 3 minutes, while notifying Sumner about the time that had lapsed. Meanwhile, Tigra controlled the crowd and made sure everyone surrendered their phones. Somner took the lead in the operation and confronted the bank tellers by pointing his pistol right at their heads, threatening to shoot them if they activated the silent alarm. After asserting his dominance over innocent staff and civilians, Somner vaulted over the barrier between him and the bank tellers, ordering the staff to give him stacks of only $20, $50, and $100 bills. Somner made sure the tellers didn't add any die packs or bait money with pre-recorded serial numbers by observing their hand movements as they put the stacks of money in his bag. Just when he was about to win big, Nathan notified Somner that 2 minutes had passed and it was time to leave before the police showed up. In a frantic state, Somner snatched the bag out of the hands of the bank teller and made his escape with $54,000. As the group was entering the getaway vehicle, a bystander became suspicious of the group's attire and noted down the license number from the front plate of Alex Blum's vehicle, which he forgot to remove before the heist began. As the group celebrated their first successful heist, it was time to hide the evidence. Alex parked the getaway vehicle at the Ranger compound, while the other group members hid the weapons in their private quarters. Somner distributed the heist money among his group members and advised everyone to leave for their hometowns. Meanwhile, at the crime scene, the FBI and local law enforcement did conclude that the heist was executed with military precision and accuracy, but they didn't need to look too far, as the bystander who witnessed the group flee from the scene handed the officers the vehicle's license number, which was traced back to Alex Blum. The robbers' victory was short-lived, as the FBI and local law enforcement officers were initiating a mass arrest operation. But before they could get their search warrants issued, all 5 members of the group had gone back to their hometowns except for Scott Byrne. But little did the gang know that they had already become prey in the eyes of the law. The first target on the FBI's hit list was none other than Alex Blum, whose Audi A4 was impounded from the Rangers' compound as evidence. But the car wasn't the only thing that was used to frame the members, as fellow Rangers from the compound had testified against the group, stating that they had had private meetings where they were heard talking about pulling off a job. During their search operations, the FBI found incriminating evidence in the living quarters of the Rangers that sealed the whole gang's fate. Among the items found were thousands of dollars in money wrappers with the label of Bank of America, along with assault rifles, light body armor, and hand grenades, which violated Army regulations regarding the possession and storage of weapons and explosive devices. The getaway car and the items found in the Rangers' living quarters were enough for the FBI to issue an arrest warrant against the individuals and start a nationwide manhunt. On August 9th, the FBI located and apprehended Alex Blum at his parents' home in Greenwood Village, Colorado. From there, the dominoes started to fall against the other members as Blum gave up the identities of the men involved in the robbery and confessed to driving the getaway vehicle, for which he was paid $10,000. Now, with a clear idea of who to catch, the FBI continued their spree of mass arrests and picked the members off one by one. A day after Blum's arrest, Chad Palmer was apprehended by the FBI, along with Luke Sommer, who was confronted by the Canadian authorities at a supermarket in his hometown of Peachland. After being notified of his fellow members' arrests and realizing that there was no other place to run, Tigra voluntarily crossed the border at Blaine, Washington, and surrendered himself to the local authorities. The manhunt ended on August 18th with Dunmall's arrest. All members of the robbery were caught within a month, and each of the 5 individuals was charged with conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery, committing armed robbery, and displaying firearms during a violent crime. Sommer faced additional charges, including possession of an unregistered machine gun on 4 occasions, possessing 3 hand grenades, and owning a homemade bomb. Even when the dust had settled, the search was far from over, as the FBI suspected more members from the Rangers' compound were part of the gang, and after thorough investigations, the FBI caught the final member of Somner's gang. Scott Byrne, in September of the same year. With their dreams shattered and nowhere to go but prison, all members of the gang agreed to testify against Somner. A man who was once looked up to by many was now going to be thrown to the wolves by the same people.
We are learning more about the armed robberies happening in Tacoma.
The group of friends attempting this robbery has never been in trouble with the law before.
He avoided our cameras after being captured.
Even though his world came crashing down, Somner's dual citizenship of both Canada and the U.S. was a saving grace that prevented him from going to prison for a temporary notice, due to which he was placed on house arrest in Peachland. As his extradition case was ongoing, Somner realized that in order to avoid being extradited from Canada, he needed to come up with a legal reason that would prevent Canadian authorities from extraditing him back to the U.S. So he used the robbery as an excuse to highlight the war crimes happening in Iraq and Afghanistan. In Somner's mind, making the robbery seem like a political crime would block his extradition process, but his defense fell short as the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division and Special Operations Command issued a 7-page detailed report that concluded Somner's allegations of war crimes as baseless and lacking substantial evidence. After realizing that his defense fell flat, Somner decided to violate his house arrest order and run away from his home. Somner's ankle monitor alerted the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who later issued a warrant for his arrest along with notifying the U.S. Border Patrol and FBI to be on the lookout for the fugitive. Somner's journey to freedom was short-lived, as Canadian authorities were alerted about his presence in Vancouver by an anonymous caller. After patrolling the area for days, on July 19, 2007, Somner was arrested at a payphone booth in Richmond. The violation of his house arrest order provoked the Canadian authorities to hold Somner in their custody until the outcome of his extradition case was announced. In May of 2008, Somner agreed to be extradited from Canada under the negotiated terms of his plea bargain. The Army Ranger turned criminal had pled guilty to 4 felony counts in the U.S. court and was sentenced to 24 years in federal prison. But it seemed like the federal charges against Somner were just getting started, as the ex-U.S. Ranger was going to become part of a more nefarious crime. During January of 2009, Somner reunited with Dunmore while serving his sentence at SeaTac Federal Detention Center. Somner held a deep grudge against the prosecutors who worked against him and started sharing plans with his fellow gang member to assassinate federal prosecutor Michael Dion. But after realizing Dunmore was one of the people who testified against him during the bank robbery case, Somner attacked Dunmore by using a makeshift knife and inflicted multiple stab wounds. After witnessing the attack, Somner was restrained by the prison guards and placed in solitary confinement. But it seemed like solitary confinement wasn't enough to teach him a lesson, as after a few months, Somner resumed his plan to assassinate Michael Dion, this time bribing an undercover FBI agent with $20,000, which landed him in more trouble. After being caught red-handed twice, Somner appeared in the U.S. District Court in Seattle on January 4, 2010, and pleaded guilty to both felonies, agreeing to an additional 20-year sentence, ending his nefarious crime spree once and for all. After deep diving into the history of the Army Rangers bank heist, we wonder, how would have things turned out if Luke Elliot Sommer hadn't joined the military? And was his defense of using the robbery as an excuse for highlighting war crimes in the Middle East genuine?